one. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty of the issues. I have joining me from our Abuja studio, Mr. Festus Okoye, is the INEC National Commissioner in charge of voter education and publicity. And here in our Lagos studio is our friend in the house, Mr. GT Ogunye, an election expert. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, Mr. Ogunye. What a politics it is, and what a dynamics this has placed on our politics. When you went to court and you cannot benefit from what perhaps has aggrieved you, maybe I should come shortly into that and ask, go to Abuja and ask Mr. Okoye how the commission arrived at its decision. A big question is going to be whether or not Mr. Metawale had met the requirements of the law. Supreme Court has said the runners-up are the beneficiary. The only place where the PDP did not benefit is one of the seats in the House of Assembly. And so the big question is, how did you arrive at it? Did Mr. Metawale, the man, the governorship, the PDP governor-elect now, as you have announced, met the criteria as prescribed by law?
Well, the truth of the matter is that what the commission did was to sit back, take a critical look at the judgment of the Supreme Court in terms of delineating the areas of compliance. We wanted to understand very clearly and unambiguously what the Supreme Court wanted us to do. First, we made a determination that the Supreme Court has asked us to declare the candidates that came second in the election as the winners of the election. Now, you know as a matter of fact that the elections were not conducted in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The election was conducted in Zamfara State. So what we did was first to go to our Electoral Operations Department to see the results they have and also see what the legal department has. And then we now also demanded for the original copies of all the from EC8B, ECAC, and ECAD, and ECHE from the resident electoral commissioner in Zamfara State to be sure that the names we have in our Electoral Operations Department are also the names that they have in our in Zamfara State. So that is one. Secondly, we needed to determine what the Supreme Court meant by wasted votes, because if you look at our standard template, we don't have any word like wasted votes. What we have are rejected votes, valid votes, and so on. So we needed to sit back and determine what wasted votes amounts to. And we made a determination that since the Supreme Court said that the political party involved did not have candidates in the first place in the election, we determined that whatever votes that the APC scored or got during the governorship elections and in all the other elections in Zamfara State were not votes at all. So we had to remove those votes, we housed them separately, and then reworked the calculations in terms of the local governments. So we had to look at all the votes called by the governorship candidate in all the local governments of Zamfara State to determine whether he has secured a quarter of the votes in 2/3 of all the local governments. So that particular calculation did not involve the 500 and something votes secured by the candidate of the APC, because the Supreme Court had made a determination that the APC technically and legally did not participate in that election. So whatever votes they got in that particular election amounted to no votes, amounted to wasted votes, and and based on that, we had to recalculate, and we determined that the candidate of the PDP secured a quarter of the votes in all the local governments of Zamfara State, and on the basis of that, we complied with the order of the Supreme Court, and we said he had met the constitutional requirement, and we declared him as duly elected governor of Zamfara State.
My lawyer friends have always said to me that my thinking sometimes is as if I always look like I studied law, but I try to have some level of critical thinking. And if, for example, Mr. Okoye, you remove the 534,000 votes that Mr. Mukhtar Ashitu got in the election, if you take that aside for a moment, look at the entire number of votes cast. And if you measure that with the vote, 189,000 votes that Mr. Metawalle is said to have gotten in that election, and you calculate it based on the percentage of votes required by law and the number of local government, are you saying to us that he has met it?
The point I'm making is that if you want to do the calculation based on our own template, the implication is that nobody went to the polls on the election day to vote for the APC as a political party. So they didn't score any votes at all. In other words, the name of APC was never on the ballot. So whatever was recorded for them as votes amounted to no votes, amounted to wasted votes. So in all the calculations we did, we subtracted the votes scored by the APC as a political party that did not participate in the elections at all. So it was on the basis of that we reworked our template and then arrived at the calculation that gave the candidate of the APC, the PDP, a quarter of the votes in all the local governments of Zamfara State.
Okay, I'm still not very clear, but it will be back and forth. So let me leave that for a moment. The big question is that which of, because this is political mathematics and it could be very dicey. And I know this is a landmark judgment, which of course has its implications in law. Supreme Court judgment is law. Because precedent now plays a major role. Another question is that which of the primary did you monitor as INEC? Where did all of these confuse INEC, or where did it become a dilemma for INEC? Because which of the primary conducted by the APC did you monitor?
No. It was never a dilemma. What the commission said was that if you recall, we released the timetable and schedule of activities for the 2019 general elections on the 9th day of January 2018, and then we also scheduled party primary elections between the 18th day of August to the 7th day of October 2018. What we said was that when the timeline for the conduct of party primary elections expired, that the APC in Zamfara State had not conducted any party primary elections known to law. So on the basis of that, the commission wrote to the party and told the party that we do not expect them to submit the list of any candidate as a candidate for any of the elective offices in Zamfara State on the basis of the fact that they didn't conduct party primary elections. So it was on the basis of that the one of the factions of the party took the Independent National Electoral Commission to court in Zamfara State, saying that we had no right to refuse to recognize the candidates of their own faction, that they had their own, what they called valid party primaries. The APC as a political party also took the commission to court before the Federal High Court in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Now, the two courts, the Federal High Court, Abuja, and the High Court in Gusau, delivered judgment on the same day. The Federal High Court in Abuja said that the commission was right and said that the party did not conduct valid party primaries, while the Gusau High Court said that the APC conducted valid party primaries on known to law. So on the basis of that, we had two contradictory court judgments on the same day. But just before the elections, the Court of Appeal, Abuja Judicial Division, made a determination that the matter that was filed by the APC in the Federal Capital Territory did not comply with the fourth alteration to the Constitution, and therefore the court had no jurisdiction. That left us with the judgment of the High Court in Gusau, which said that the APC as a political party conducted valid party primaries. On the basis of that, we allowed them to contest the elections. But on appeal, the Court of Appeal made a determination that what they conducted was not valid party primary elections. And it is that that judgment of the Court of Appeal that went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court affirmed the judgment of the Court of Appeal, Sokoto Judicial Division. And that is what led us to this stage now.
All right. It does look like water is finding its level because the governor said, of course, it does look like there's no way to go in law. Mr. Ogunye, you are the lawyer here, although Mr. Okoye too is a lawyer, but he's not speaking to us as a lawyer, he's speaking to us as an INEC man. What is the implication of this, Mr. Ogunye, for a moment? In the jurisdiction of politics and our electoral practice?
I like that question. But let me quickly say that, I pity INEC in all this. It has to meander through the labyrinth of the decisions of our court at every point in time. And that's how it should be, because it must be a slave to the rule of law. So once the court rules one way, it complies. If a higher court rules another way, it then has to comply. Now, let me say that the decision that has been handed by the Supreme Court is a decision that is binding on all authority and person. I reference Section 287 of the Constitution, and it is gladdening that INEC has promptly complied. It allows for no equivocation. The Supreme Court was direct in that judgment, and parties are bound by their decisions, and they have to comply. But let me say that that judgment has implications for our democratic development. My passion is to see how our courts can help to deepen our democratic process, especially by helping to discover the will of the electorate. I'm not usually comfortable when courts now substitute their own wisdom, and they are wise jurists, for the wisdom of the electorate. When you say that 500,000 or more votes are wasted votes because of the misbehavior of parties, it has a lot of implication, because they went for election and they voted believing that they were voting for candidates who were qualified at that time, and now their votes were wasted. What the Supreme Court has done in this case is a variant somewhat of the decision of the Supreme Court in INEC and Amaechi, which was reported in 5 Nigerian Weekly Law Reports, 2008, part 1080, at page 227, which made Mr. Rotimi Amaechi a governor without his name being on the ballot as the time the election was conducted, and then Celestine Omeya was shoved aside. In this case, in a classical pre-election matter, what the Supreme Court has done technically is to pivot, is to straddle over to giving a relief that ordinarily would have emanated in a typical election petition, where parties who have contested the election will be at liberty to say that the person who had been elected weren't qualified as one of the grounds recognized under Section 138 of the Electoral Act, is to straddle crossover and then say, we are going to do this in one fell swoop. A pre-election matter that we are determining, but you weren't qualified. And so, consequentially, those who scored next to you haven't recorded wasted votes, automatically will be declared to have won the election. For political parties, it's important that they get the message. And I think that this judgment is heavy on the messaging side. That they get the message that they just can't do whatever they like. INEC will roll out guidelines, and they then say, yeah, you can have your guidelines, but we are on the ground here. We'll do whatever we please. You won't do whatever you please. You do what the law requires you to do, because our elections are governed by the electoral law. It's governed by the statute.
So a big question.
And so, for me, that has that import. But the larger issue for me is that now we have this decision, and our courts have had the final say. For the electorate who had voted, who didn't envisage or envision that down the line they will be told that their votes have been wasted. It has a lot of implications.
So does it also emphasize the supremacy of the political party as a factor here? Because then it brings to the fore that what the party has said, and for example, the likes of Senator Marafa here, who is terribly aggrieved and went to court and unfortunately could not get a benefit from of this, is the emphasis of this on the internal wrangling in the party. What implication does it have in an internal issue of the party?
Well, on the contrary, what this has signified is the supremacy of the rule of law. That what our courts decide at any point in time is the law of the land. Political parties can do all their shenanigans and all that. At the end of the day, they will come to judgment, like Daniel, one day, and then they will have this kind of judgment. But let me just quickly say this in elaboration. This has a long history. After the Ameshi's judgment, the National Assembly tinkered with the Electoral Act, and in Section 141, it made a provision that anybody who didn't participate in all the phases of election can never be declared to have won an election, thereby trying to legislate to deal with that specific situation. In Section 140, Subsection 2, it also provided, looking at what happened in all those cases, Fayemi and Oni, and all those cases where our courts were then declaring those who challenged successfully the outcome of the elections as the winner of the election. It then legislated under Section 140, Subsection 2, that it shall never be a situation that any person who had won an election, who scored the highest votes in an election, but who is now found to be unqualified at the time he ran the election, or that if the election is marred with malpractices or non-compliance with the electoral provision of the Electoral Act, that no court or tribunal shall declare the person who scored the second highest votes as winner. But the courts also intervened, Justice Kolawole, Justice Okeke of the Federal High Court, to say that those two sections, as amended, are null and void, thereby paving way, without the Supreme Court even saying that it's following what those judges of the lower bench have decided, to make this kind of decision. Because eventually and ultimately, the court is saying that you cannot tie our hands. All our laws permit us to make any decision, to grant any orders for the purpose of enforcing the legal rights of a party that comes before the court.
Let's take a pause, Mr. Ogunye. There are, in fact, far more far-reaching implications on of this. In the National Assembly politics, there is an implication on it. Local politics in Zamfara, there's an implication. Even for INEC, there are implications. We dissect that, and I will point out some of the issues to INEC when we come back from this break. We'll be dissecting what looks like a shot in the leg for the APC by his own self. Join us again, everyone.
Another May 29 beckons. It is time to celebrate the inauguration of His Excellency, Senator Dr. Ifeanyi Arthur Okowa, as the Governor of Delta State for another term, with a day of praise and worship to God. On ground, it will be Travis Green, Eben, all the days of my life I pray. Chioma Jesus, Team Godfrey, Mercy Chingo, and Solomon Ureti. Date Wednesday, May 29, 2019. Democracy Day. Venue, the Events Center, Obanam Road, Asaba. Time, 3:30 p.m. Admission is free. Deltans, let's celebrate with our governor in a day of praise and worship. This message is powered by the Delta State Government.
Enter the world of luxury Swiss Street Doors. With over 28 years experience, stock is of exquisite historical doors made from the finest ancient aga and ivory wood. A range of exclusive armored doors, elegant interior doors, carefully crafted by the world's renowned architects and engineers. At Swiss Street, a door is much more. Plus, florals and premium quality onyx marbles. Distributors wanted nationwide. Visit Swiss Trade today or call now. Swiss Trade, a blend of beauty and security.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
Welcome back, everyone. So the conversation around Zamfara State. For a moment, let's leave Zamfara State out of the picture because Zamfara State was just, Zamfara State APC like a guinea pig in all of this because usually the case of Amechi and Omeha losing out at that time and Amechi being a beneficiary became a law because afterwards every other person that fell into that shoe had to fall into what the law of the Supreme Court judgment had formed as a law. So what had happened, a lot of people wonder that could the election have been reconducted all over again to accommodate a fresh primary, because we've seen in a situation where elections were cancelled and the court has called for a re-election. But that is the wisdom of the Supreme Court, that this is how it should go. Those who came second should benefit. But for the APC and its internal politics, don't forget some of the situation that happened in the APC at a time there were primaries across the country. Ogun State had its own issues. Zamfara State is one of the biggest ones. Imo State is one, and another case in point. So, what is the implication of the ruling party? Which, for example, in the National Assembly, in the Senate, for example, I lost 3 senators to the PDP. PDP has gotten more numbers. APC has lost more numbers in a case where they are jostling for numbers in the National Assembly. My panel tonight, Mr. J.T. Ogunye, a lawyer and our expert in election analysis. These are election issues. His job is not quite over yet with us. And Mr. Festus Okoye is the National Commissioner in charge of voter education and publicity. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on. Let me quickly get you. Did APC shoot itself in the foot in this one?
It did. It did. And I think that should go and nurse its wounds and gnash its teeth. Because you must be responsible. Political party system is such that politicians think that they own the party. They could own the party, but the people own the offices you are gunning for. You've got to respect the rule of law. You've got to do things properly. And so those who are playing God thinking that they will have to anoint a candidate before that candidate can win election, maybe they will be having a rethink. And there you were asking the question the other time that how do you have a decision that the person who was, driving that process has not benefited. There's something that I like Yoruba language a lot, and it's not because of Yoruba. There's something the Yorubas call kakake kuma jesese afishawadanu. So this is a Kakakikumajensi judgment.
So invariably, for me not to, if I may,
I will benefit, but
we start
nobody will benefit.
Yeah.
That kind of thing and all that. And so, moving forward, one of the things that political parties will have to do, will have to ensure that they scrupulously follow the due process of law, follow the provisions of the Electoral Act, and ensure that anytime they are doing their primary, they do it properly. INEC has had a lot of problems with political parties because they became unruly. And we're not just talking about the ruling party, all of them, by not following what they should follow. And so they made the job of INEC more difficult. And this job can really be made easier.
What I said I was going to point out to INEC is that in comparison to 2015 election, this is by far the highest number of litigations coming after an election since 2015. And most of these cases, Mr. Okoye, are cases of coming out of the primaries, pre-election matters. What has changed and what is making it look this way?
Well, I think that the political parties have refused to pay attention to the clear provisions of Section 87 of the Electoral Act. Because Section 87, if you read it carefully, most of the sections are couched in mandatory terms. It says that political parties must hold party primaries. There is no running away from it. You must hold party primary elections. Now, it gives the political parties two parts. It's either you hold direct primaries or you hold indirect primaries. But it makes it very clear that every person who has made himself or herself available for party primary elections is an aspirant. And then it goes on to say that when you want to hold your party primary elections, you must make sure that you conduct proper elections and that it is only the candidate, only the aspirant that has the highest number of votes in the party primary elections that his or her name must be submitted to the Independent National Electoral Commission as the candidate of the party. In other words, one, if a political party does not conduct party primary elections, either indirect primaries or direct primaries, every person in that political party remains an aspirant and no candidate has emerged. Now, if a candidate has emerged, it is only the candidate that scored the highest number of votes that can transform into a candidate. So if a candidate scores 100 votes and then the second person scores 10 votes, and then you carry the name of the person who scored 10 votes and you submit to INEC as the candidate of the party, that has not met the requirements of Section 87. In other words, it is only a candidate that has gone through party primary elections that can be submitted to.
From what we, if Minister Okoye, if the kind of scenario we're seeing happened, because Mr. Okorocha, for example, is still saying you have not given him his certificate of return after he was said to have won the election. How are you ensuring that this kind of scenario does not play out again in our future elections, primary election and all of that?
Well, yes, you see, we have the Kogi and Bayelsa elections coming up in November. And I think that this is an eye-opener, and this is a lesson. Section 85 of the Electoral Act gives the Commission the power and the mandate to monitor party primary elections. So this is just to give the political parties enough notice to the fact that the Independent National Electoral Commission will monitor all party primary elections for Bayelsa and for Kogi states. And we are going to pay close attention to the provisions of Section 85 and Section 87 of the Electoral Act. And we are going to insist that only political parties that meet the requirements of Section 87 can approach the Commission under Section 31 of the Electoral Act. And the Supreme Court has given us a very clear mandate on what to do. So we expect and we hope, as the chairman of the Commission pointed out, that political parties will learn the requisite lessons from what has happened with the Supreme Court judgment.
Mr. Ogunye, you give us your closing remark for the program.
Yeah.
This one. a lot of scenarios, interesting ones that have happened in the 2019 elections that will go in the history books as some of the most interesting and intriguing scenarios that have played out. Your takeaway from the 2019 elections and some of the issues?
Let me start by saying that sometimes people may not really appreciate what those who sit down to write judgment at the apex level, what considerations may be playing up in their minds before they give a judgment. If the Supreme Court had not given this decision and had left it open, given the decisions of the Supreme Court on the non-availability of a grant of non-qualification of the candidate who had won the election to successfully challenge the election, for example, in the Mama Taraba's case against Isiaku, that would then mean that even if PDP were to go to court based on that judgment, a tribunal would tell it that the Supreme Court is saying that go and mind your own business. It is not in your own party.
Interloper.
So what the Supreme Court has done in the circumstances is just a way to resolve the conundrum that could have developed. But let me say, in closing, by saying that, the 2019 election was a very important election because it came on the verge of the two-decade anniversary of our civil rule. And the critical questions people continue to ask, it's been 20 years, and we've had many elections in this country now. Are we maturing? Is our electoral system developing? Is the conduct of political parties and party men, is their conduct getting better? Is the conduct of the electorate that has now developed the appetite for see and buy, 5,000, 2,000, is their conduct getting better? I think that these are the issues that will continue to agitate the minds of Nigerians and those who feel very strongly about the electoral system going forward. And we can only hope that in the next election, as stated by Mr. Festus Okoye, INEC will have learned some of these lessons and then ensure that the electoral system gets better.
Indeed, so much to learn and so much to take away. But thank you, as always, for breaking this down for us. The legal part of this might be very naughty, and for an average man like me, it's very difficult to dissect. Mr. Okoye, I see you smiling. Thank you so much for coming on. And Mr. Chiti Okoye, thank you so much for coming on. That's our show for today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimbale. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
It's the Channels Book Club's Literature Prize Season 4. This year, the winners get a sponsored trip to one of the world's most exciting book events, the 2019 BusherCon Convention, taking place at Dallas, Texas, United States of America. If you're a senior secondary school student in any Nigerian school, get a copy of the novel titled Pelican of the Wilderness by Jacqueline Agwe. Read it, write an essay to review the book, and submit it to Channels Television on or before June the 30th, 2019. For all required information, visit our website or call the numbers on your screen.
Hi, I'm back. It's been action and more action at the Channels International Kids Cup. The final showdown is set as Channels Television, in collaboration with Eco Football, takes grassroots football to the big stage. 16 teams, one trophy. Who will be the champion? Catch the fun and feel the passion on May the 27th at the Campus Square Mini Stadium. It will be an exciting show of young talent. Channels Kids Cup. Catching them young.
People's Democratic Party in the 2019 2019 presidential election, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar commenced the judgment of the Supreme Court, which voided the APC candidates for the governorship and State House of Assembly seats in the elections in Zamfara State. According to the former vice president, the judgment is a victory for all those who stand for justice. He said in his words, nothing is as pleasing to hear that justice being served in the month of Ramadan. What does this mean to the leading party and others in the elections? What legal interpretation can we get from this? We'll focus on it with a strong panel in our Abuja studios in just a moment. Data feeds are coming through in one place simultaneously on all our social media platforms, channelstv.com and on youtube.com/channelsweb. You can follow us right now on m.channelstv.com. We got all our information on social media covered. Be part of the show. Tweet at Gimba Umar CTV. Use the hashtag State of the Nation. Let's get your thoughts in. With just days to round up the 8th Assembly, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, has described the Assembly as the most performing in Nigeria's history, judging from the manner in which it works with the executive arm of government. In a statement on Wednesday, the